That's Twisted.
This is Mark McNease in New York City with my co-host,
Rick Rose in Shreveport, Louisiana.
And you're listening to The Twist. Rick, how are you?
Good morning, Mark. I'm well, and you?
I'm great, and I want our listeners to know that they can view us too, because you and I are looking at each other. I'm here in my kitchen studio in New Jersey.
And I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana today.
Yeah, our second home out here in the woods.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Bunch of deer on the lawn last night, by the way.
Dead or alive?
No, they're alive. They're all alive. We have a gun club up the road, which isn't connected, but I couldn't get my gun in time. I ran for the rifle, and the damn deer heard me. What the hell?
Like I really believe that. Okay.
So anyways,
once
everybody.
I went deer hunting and shot a wolf instead. I wasn't good.
You did?
I did. I thought it was a deer. I was young. I was 13. They shouldn't put a gun in my hands at 13.
No.
Anyway.
No,
yes. Welcome everybody to our podcast.
Welcome everybody to The Twist as we idly chatter. Just letting everybody know we're on YouTube now too. So they can listen to us at thetwistpodcast.com, our audio version, which is on Libsyn and SoundCloud. I'm going to get it on Stitcher. It's really not difficult. I just haven't had a chance. But we're doing the YouTubes too, because we used to do another podcast called The Side Dish, and we had folks loved it. You know, they said you guys are really, really engaging. I'm not going to call us. You know, I won't put it on myself to say that we're funny, but
they were saying you two are very engorged. But
yes, yeah, and so I said, well, we got this new podcast now. Let's put it on YouTube, so they can find us on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in The Twist Podcast. You can also watch.
Oh, go ahead.
No, they can watch the videos on the website, thetwistpodcast.com.
Yeah, we're everywhere, global. But Mark, I'm a little dark, don't you think, this morning?
You're a little dark. I'm dark too. It's dark. This is a dark house. It's
a dark day.
A challenge to get set up properly in this house because it's a dark house.
You might need to buy a third house.
You have a bunch of light behind you. Go to the light, Rick. Go to the light.
Oh yeah, but then I'm going to turn on the light. Hold on. You get mad when I move. God, you yelled at me
Well, because
earlier.
we lose the. Okay.
How's that?
That's great. Okay, now.
Okay, now on with the show.
Keep it moving. Well, and I also want to say hello to our email subscribers. We got a whole bunch this week. We thank you. We love each and every one of you. You can email subscribe again at the site. Just go to the site for all of this stuff. You can email subscribe. You can also subscribe in iTunes. We got a slew of them, and it sort of made me feel like Miss Susie when I was a kid. She you remember her? She would gaze through the little handheld mirror that didn't have a mirror in it.
And I see Mark.
Yes,
and
I see Mark. I see Rick.
I think that was Romper Room or something.
Yes. So we're calling out. We're imaginingly calling out the names of all of our new email subscribers. And I also want to say a big hello, November hello to our partners. We don't call them sponsors. It's kind of like being called a guest by the cashier at Walgreens. We have partners. Krieger Cole Communications, a New York-based media company that offers media training, public speaking coaching, and media relations expertise. Contact Cindy Krieger or Rainey Cole at KriegerCole.com. And Amy Mays Photography. She's done my author headshots. She's fabulous. She's a documentary, portrait, and event photographer, also out of New York, and an ally and activist, LGBT ally and activist. And she takes amazing photos. So, also, she just relaunched her website. That was the big reveal that I promised. So, if you go to amymaysphotography.com, it's MAYES. She's got a new website, new focus. It's just gorgeous. Of course, she's gorgeous too, but that's the deal. Those are our partners for November. So welcome to show number 2, The Twist Podcast, News and Opinion with what, Rick?
Mark and Rick.
No, with a twist.
Oh, with a twist.
No, we're dropping the Mark and Rick because I don't want to ever feel. I don't want you to ever feel overshadowed.
You're right.
So it's the Twist Podcast.
It is.
And we start out with the weekly Readlines. Are you ready?
We are, but before we get into Readlines, just a couple other matters we're going to be discussing today. Yes, I was lecturing Mark that I've worked 30 years in radio. And
25. How to go? It was 25 when we started this conversation.
Hey, by the way, the show we created, Into the Outdoors, that won several Emmys for us and blah, blah, blah. Hey, Emmy ceremony tonight. My niece, who hosted an episode, was nominated, so she's playing down in Chicago.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so cool.
Very nice. But yes, in my plethora of years, or many years of this, we want to just tell you a couple things that are coming up. We're going to definitely take on Ben Carson this week because everybody's talking about that liar. So we have to talk about him, Mark.
Yes, absolutely. He's our hashtag.
Yeah, you'll learn more about it a little later in the show. And taking on the Church of the Latter-day Saints. I want to talk about their policy that came out this week that's kind of saying choose us as a religion Or choose your gay parents.
Or your parents,
or same-sex parents, but you can't have both. Anyways, on to the red lines.
Really sad. There were so many to choose from. It's very difficult, but, I think of time, too, so I'm keeping it to 4. Oh, by the way, actually, I was going to read these 2 that I just saw online.
Nice.
Let me pull it up here. I won't take very long here. And
we're current.
Oh, yeah. No, the post I never know how to say this. Obergefell. Anyways, the gay marriage ruling. Nearly 1 million Americans are now in a same-sex marriage.
Wow.
So that's nearly 500,000 marriages. And also, this is for you because you're in Louisiana. David Vitter's being challenged, and there's a new ad up that opens with the image of David Vitter, and it says, David Vitter chose prostitutes over patriots. Love those Louisiana politics.
It's getting ugly.
Yeah, it's returning to ugly. Houston's anti-discrimination ordinance went down in flames in a lopsided 61-39 vote. Opponents of the law played the bathroom panic card and won spectacularly. Kentuckians elected Tea Party darling Matt Bevin, who promised to destroy the state's highly successful health exchange when he's not doing photo ops with noted theologian Kim Davis, and to end expanded Medicaid, dooming many of the people who voted for him to an early death. A new study found that death rates, speaking of mortality, have risen for middle-aged whites. This may cheer some people. Driven by an epidemic of suicides and afflictions stemming from substance abuse, alcoholic liver disease, and overdoses of heroin and prescription opioids. So, Rick, I hope none of those are an issue for you.
No, because, I got my diet. Yeah, I got my other.
You're middle-aged and you're white. Yes. This could be bad news. Finally, on the Weekly Readlines, the man many of us know affectionately as Poppy Bush, the 41st President of the United States, has harsh words for Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney in his new book, referring to Cheney as, quote, iron-assed, and offering a surely unwanted critique of his son's presidency. Those are the Weekly Readlines. Like I said, there could have been a dozen more. It was such a news-filled week.
Indeed. And we're going to take on some topics this week. I want to take on Obama banning the box, Mark.
Yes, you sent me ban the box. I thought you were talking about pussy.
I know a lot of people thought that, I'm sure, when you write about it and stuff, and then you read about it in the press. But no, he took on the box and started to ban the box and tell how he was banning the box in New Jersey, the place you're sitting.
But what's
Rutgers
the box?
University. Well, it's that little box. Have you ever applied for a job where it says, have you ever been charged with a felon?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Well, it's gone. And most politicians, all 3 Democratic candidates for 2016 presidential race have said they want to ban the box. Obama laid it out in New Jersey on Monday, announcing a series of measures that are designed to create less obstacles for men and women who have come out of prison to get jobs. Because think about it, when you mark that box, you're kind of saying you're untouchable. And so recidivism and all this stuff happens. Someone gets out of prison, and what do? They commit another crime and go back in because the job market isn't really to their favor. I am in total support of it. It's starting in the federal government. It's an executive action. It will apply to all federal employees, but not to federal contractors. But if you're a federal employee, you no longer have to mark the box. The issue has come up many times in the campaign trail, like I mentioned. What I find interesting, it's not just about, being able to go and get another job. There's so much more attached to the executive order. He's going to look at public housing for released prisoners. He's going to look at a lot of things, different hurdles that they've had to face, just felons in general. I find it interesting because really we had a case of that in a big corporate company that I worked for. Someone had marked it. They had told me what their situation was. It was a time when they were selling cocaine or something like that. And I called human resources to say, what do I do about it? But it's very interesting because often it doesn't block you from being hired. It just makes you aware as you're bringing in a new candidate to figure out what their issues may be if you should proceed in hiring them. And I was shocked. Human resources said, oh, yeah, you can hire them as long as you feel comfortable that, in what their crime was and how that relates to their job. But the box has been banned by an executive order, and I think it's just the beginning of a lot of criminal justice things that'll come out. I want to remind folks, too, because people want to hit the president all the time. Look at all the things he's done, Mark. I just looked last night again. He's rescinded the global gag rule. He's had the most diverse cabinet of any president. He signed the Edward Kennedy Serve America Act, launched U.S. financial and banking rescue plan, provided new federal funding for science and research labs. I could go on and on. Supported gay same-sex marriage, and now he's taken on criminal justice.
Good for him. I don't like those little questions because I always I always thought it said, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony?" That's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And of course, no. But I swear I saw one that said, "Have you ever been convicted of a crime?" And it's like, well, yeah, when I was in high school.
Exactly. Well,
So,
even I think you're seeing it say, "Have you ever been committed of a felon?" But you think, "Oh my God, did what I do was that?" You know
yeah,
what
was
I
that a
mean?
felony? It was like, because I had a
Exactly.
pipe. I had a hash pipe. Anyways,
Exactly.
okay. Drop the T. That's my first of my two topics. There's an online position. We were defeated in Houston, or Anise Parker was, and the LGBT. It's actually an anti-discrimination ordinance that protected 15 classes, including like veterans and handicapped people. But because it had gender identity in there, the opponents, of course, latched onto the bathroom panic thing, and it's like, I'm going to talk about that later. But so since then, some like they call them homocons, but a conservative gay person came out in support of this petition that was put up on change.org. It was put up anonymously. I don't know why. I mean, if you really believe these in something, why would you not use your name? But it was, calling for the LGB community, such as it is, to drop the T, to dump the transgender folks, saying that, sexual orientation and gender identity are not the same thing, which they're not. And a lot of times, trans people will, educate folks in saying, I'm transgender, I'm not gay. But GLAAD immediately said, no, we're not going to do this. This is outrageous. And I'm on the GLAAD side with this one, and the right side, I think, because it's just, no, we're not going to throw trans people under the bus so that we can get these things passed. But I do want to say that it wasn't very long ago that was much more commonly proposed. Go back 5, 6, 7 years. I remember the ENDA bill did not include gender identity, and there were gay activists, gay bloggers saying, don't include the T because we're never going to get it passed with that there. And this is kind of what these folks are saying now. Get rid of the T, get rid of the trans folks, so that we can get these ordinances without going down to defeat. But I say go down to defeat with your head up high and do the right thing. My biggest influence with trans issues and trans people in that reality was my first sponsor, back in the 80s when I was in AA. Was Gina Ray, and she was Paul when I met her. She was Paul, and he was my sponsor, and he was such a huge influence in my life, not just with that, substance abuse issue, but as a human being. He was a phenomenal human being, and then he transitioned to Gina Ray, and she died from AIDS, and that was 25 years ago. So that's where it all started with me, and there's no way, and if nothing else, but for in memory of her, I would never advocate doing what's being put out there now. And I don't think sane people will, but, that was one of my topics.
I think it's a great topic, in that we've had many guests on our previous podcasts. With Mark and I have done several podcasts in the past under other names. One was focused on LGBT community, and we had Megan Stabler on as guest, who sits on Obama's Council on LGBT issues. And she reminded us, because we talked about the schism, issues for bisexuals are very different than transgender issues are different than gay and lesbian issues. But Mark, we are family, and I expect you to put that song behind this before you put us up on YouTube.
I'd have to license it, sweetie. I can't.
I know, but I can do a version of it real quick, and it only costs you $1,000. There you go, dancing away. We are. Well, I can't sing, but that's it. We're family together. I mean, back in the 80s when the pandemic hit, in honor of your friend, it was the lesbian community that came together with their energy and their fight for those of us in the gay community that were losing friends and by choice stuck in hospital rooms and fighting in courts. It was the lesbian community that stepped up to the plate for us. And I think that's true in the transgender community. We need to step up to the plate for the transgender folk and our friends. So I strongly agree that for a while I thought, nah, let it go apart. Let everybody deal with their issues. But you can do that under the umbrella LGBTQ. That's how I feel.
Yes, and then this is crazy, but my last thought on it, I thought maybe they could just start, like the city council. First of all, it's outrageous that the court in Texas forced them to put it to a vote.
Yeah.
But the city council, maybe they can just pass a law that requires absolutely every business to have a unisex bathroom.
Very good point.
Why not?
Well, that does bring up my next subject. I want to talk. It's been about 20 years since Brandon Teena passed away, or actually was brutally murdered, I should say, by gunshot. Brandon Teena, of course, was the subject of the movie Boys Don't Cry, Kimberly Pierce's Oscar-winning film back in 1999. Never knew the story of what happened back in the early 90s until I saw the film. Didn't know what I was walking into, actually, Mark. But this is the anniversary. We're approaching that 22-year mark. And it's very interesting because a lot of the attention in the trans community and the rates of violence are against trans women of color. We talk about that a lot. We hear the stories of it. We have activists out there talking about it. It's a disproportionate rate. But when you really think of the movement for transgender rights, it really started back with the death of Brandon Teena, who was a transsexual male. I'm sorry. He was a trans male. And we need to remember that story. And because of what happened there, a lot of movement happened with Transsexual Menace and Gender PAC and different groups that came together to kind of fight together. But I found it interesting as we approached the anniversary, the two gentlemen that were charged with the crime of killing him, brutally raping him and then killing him. One of them is on death row at the Lincoln Correctional Center. But recently, Kimberly Pierce came out, the director of the movie, and said there's a third culprit here. And that gentleman was the sheriff. His name is Charles Laux. So let's call him out, Laux. He's currently a bus driver down in the small little town where this all happened in Falls City, Nebraska. And Lux got off the hook. When on November 25th, when Brandon faced a demeaning list of questions from him after being raped, you can go online, folks. I just don't want to bring up the questions. But
it's in the movie.
It's in the movie. And you can look him up now if you don't remember. It was just horrible. He released the two gentlemen who ended up on New Year's Eve, just days later, less than a week later, killing Brandon. And there should be a call to action. That's what I'm calling for now, that people who have allowed these things to happen, even though it wasn't at their hands, so to speak, it was under their hands. They need to be accountable. And when we start to let things happen like they're happening in Houston, we start a slippery slope back, folks, and we can't let that happen.
No. And that includes politicians, like my end quote later on, the lieutenant governor down there in Texas, who get behind these things, like the bathroom bill they're calling them, or in this case it was the reverse. But when some transgender woman goes into a men's room because she can't use the women's room, and she gets the shit kicked out of her or killed, it's on your hands, It's on these people's hands. So
it's awful.
Well, and that brings up, boy, everything's kind of threading together today, because my second topic is fear and loathing in politics. And it's not just with the Houston bill, but in Kentucky, too, where they elected Matt Bevin as the new governor, who promised, he campaigned on basically destroying the Kentucky Health Exchange, which is one of the most successful in the country. Their uninsured rate has dropped dramatically. They've insured over 500,000 people between Connect, which is the exchange, and the Medicaid expansion. I mean, Kentucky has been a shining example of why the law was needed and how it can work. And they elect this guy who's going to come in here and destroy it and try to throw all these people out of health insurance. And, I think quite a few of them voted for him. Now, on the other thing, and this I wasn't planning on this, but our voter levels are so low in this country, that only 31% of eligible voters in Kentucky voted. And he was elected with a little over half. So we're talking like 15%, 16% of eligible voters in Kentucky put this man into office.
Oh, my God, that's horrible.
We have to be accountable. I'm sorry, but we have to be accountable for our realities. And if he gets in there and does what he says he's going to do, and people end up dying because they don't have health insurance, they get thrown off their chemo regimen, and they voted for him, or didn't vote when they could have. I don't know. It's like, I'm always hesitant to say things about that, but we really do have a tremendous amount to say who's governing us. and they picked this guy. But anyways, it's Fear and Loathing. That was my topic, because the same thing in Houston. They made it all about, men and girls trying to molest women and girls in women's rooms, pretending to be trans, which is it's insane. It's insane, and the ignorance and the lack of education and being informed about transgenderism is like, just like, wow, my eyes pop at how totally wrong people are. But then again, the opponents know this. They know what's going on, but they knew that if they made this bill about heterosexual male predators in women's rooms, dressed up with maybe some lipstick on or something, that they just frightened all these people and scared them into thinking that this was some kind of threat. And it's all fear and loathing, and I think that's been a part of American politics forever. People accomplish their agendas. They get their agendas through based on fear and loathing, and gay people certainly have been the brunt of that many, many, many times. But I just wanted to talk about that. I wish we would see less of it. I don't think we will, because maybe that's just politics. Maybe that's just part of it. But fear and loathing won big time last week.
And we're going to pick that topic later, right? Pick it up later with my last bell, which is our last comment before we end our show. But before the last bell, and it is interesting how this has a nice flow, but the hashtag segment is next, Mark, and it's going to kind of interrupt our flow, but I love it because we got to take this man on. Your turn. Get up.
Thank you for reminding me. My mind is my mind is a little bit slipping away.
Well, I think our mind is on the T today. It really is,
Well, T-ag. Hashtag. There's a T in tag. Hashtag, our hashtag segment. Hashtag been there, done that. All about Ben Carson, Ben. Oh. And, I don't follow the guy that closely, but he's been in the news because he just makes things up. And, he talks about somebody that he first of all, he pretends that he was like an angry young black man, and then he found Jesus or something, and now he's a calm politician who believes in, the earth is 6,000 years old, but he made up somebody that he stabbed when he was a kid, and they can't find any evidence that it's true. And then now he says, oh, it's a close relative, and I can't give his name away. And then now it's just come out that he lied, because I'm not sure that he's lying. I'm not sure that he's just not deluded. There's a difference between lying and being deluded. But he said he was offered a scholarship to West Point, and West Point is saying no.
It doesn't work that way. You give now 4 years and you go into
now he's trying to deflect it and say, you media types, they always do that. It's you media types are just
liberal media, yes,
after me and all of this stuff. But he's deluded, and I hoped he's not the nominee. I certainly would flee somewhere if he were our president. Because we can't have people who don't know the difference between the truth and a lie and reality, and what your fevered imagination tells you is reality. So that was my hashtag, man. We gotta not let him get anywhere. I don't think he has a chance in the general election, but our country's so weird right now, you don't know.
I know, and I know it's your segment, but I got to just add, I was reading one of his other fabrications where he said the day after the killing of Martin Luther King, growing up in Detroit, he had the key to the science lab. Of course, he's the mad scientist that he is. And he brought a bunch of white kids that were being attacked by blacks because there was an uproar into the lab and saved them. And, of course, he doesn't remember one of their names. And the school has no record of this incident happening. But anyway, so the hashtag is what, Mark?
Hashtag been there, done that. BEN. They fire poor Brian Williams for making stuff up.
Well, and I'm not going to lie. Hillary had her little made-up story about being in Bosnia in '96 with her daughter, Chelsea, being shot at, and there was no evidence of that. But I don't think she's delusional. I think
and people misremember things. It's not quite the same.
That's true. All right. I'm going to pick up our story from before about how we live in fear. So this is the last bell.
Final bell.
Final bell. The last comment we have for the day. On a topic we referenced earlier in the show, the Church of the Latter-day Saints coming out this week and having a ruling about LGBTs' experiences in their community. And Mark, they came out, so gay Mormons will now be forced to choose between the love of their spouse and the love of the Latter-day Saints. you are immediately being excommunicated from the church if you're in a same-sex marriage, and you will not be allowed into that church. But now their children will have to wait until they are of age to choose between their parents and the LDS church. So in other words, the ruling this week came down. The word came down from the Mormon Council that basically said, if you're a child of parents who are in a same-sex committed relationship, you cannot be a member of the church. So now children, when they turn 18, have to make the choice. And I love this because they're putting same-sex marriage on another level. Before they've, looked at issues related to attempted murder, forcible rape, sexual abuse, spousal abuse, intentional serious physical injury of others, adultery, fornication, and deliberate abandonment of family responsibilities. These are all reasons you can be excommunicated from the church. And now, because you love someone of the same gender, you can also be excommunicated. Or because you have parents who are of same-sex relationship, you can be excommunicated. And I never thought of the power. I'm gonna give 3 quick quotes that I read following this story over the course of the week, because I have many friends that are of the Mormon faith. Some of my friends tell me, move on, Rick, you don't have to join the church. But you know what? A lot of people believe in the tenets of the church and want to be a member of that church. Similar as an ELCA Lutheran. When we weren't ordaining when we weren't ordaining clergy who were LGBT, I wanted to leave my church. But I didn't want to because I believe in the tenets of the church and I grew up in that faith. And so my pastor told me, well, then you have to fight from within to bring the change about. And today I will say, not because of me personally, but I sat on councils and I worked within the community, my own church family, that we now ordain LGBT community, and we also ordain, non-celibate or, quote, practicing LGBT community, because the first step was, we'll let the gays and lesbians be ministers, but they can't be practicing sex. And we've come a long way. So to me, I'm not going to let it go. I have friends that believe in this faith. I have friends that have been hurt by their faith. And I believe in it. And here's a couple things. This is a story this gentleman wrote. I've been living with Rob for the past 5 months. My kids live with us part of the time, and their mother most of the time. I have left the church, but their mother is not. And now they have to make a choice, these kids, when they turn 18, between sticking with their mom and the faith that they're growing up in, or these little boys will have to make a choice to stay with their same-sex partnered fathers. So it's a little more complicated than, when you have split families. It could go either which way. A statement from Affirmation, which came out about it. Affirmation is an organization within the Church of Latter-day Saints that comments on things and advocates in the community. They basically came out and said, we cannot imagine Jesus Christ denying any child of baptism because of the status of their parents. It goes against everything I ever thought the Savior and baptism was about. Good for them. Fight the fight. And a statement by Mama Dragons. I have a friend that's very active in Mama Dragons. These are mothers and women who support their Mormon families. They shared their fears, and I love this quote, Mark. They said, we are collectively heartbroken today as our children get the message loud and clear that they are not wanted here, that they are merely collateral damage in some holy, moral, values war. And that is the final bell.
Thank you, Rick. Very, very thought-provoking. And our end quote. We end the show on an end quote. I'm going back and forth. It's me this week. This is my quote. Following the Houston the vote that overturned the ordinance there, quote, it was about protecting our grandmoms and our mothers and our wives and our sisters and our daughters and our granddaughters. From Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, defending grandmoms everywhere. It's so wrong on so many levels, and that's why it's my end quote. I didn't feel like being inspirational this week. It presents trans women as heterosexual male predators. It assumes that trans men don't exist. Who knows where they're going to go to the bathroom? And it presents women as damsels, who must be defended by their cavemen protectors. It was just, I don't know, the whole thing was very upsetting to me. That's my end quote. If I were a woman, even if a woman of any political stripe, I would say to this guy, I don't need you to protect me. But anyways, that's the end quote. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Twist, America's only clothing optional podcast.